shifting climates, sudden catastrophes, economic collapse, disease, war, and exile will visit cities frozen in a single day, towns consumed by fire or sand, and entire civilizations that have simply disappeared and left us with only their ruins to walk through. This isn't just a list of abandoned places, it's a search for patterns, the repeating reasons humans leave behind their creations. And by the end, we'll ask the bigger question lurking behind these discoveries. If some of the greatest cities on Earth have now almost become forgotten, what could become of the ones we live in today? And, more crucially, is there anything we can do to stop it? To understand why humans abandon their cities, it will help to start at the beginning, with the ancient world. Long before skyscrapers and highways, entire civilizations rose, flourished, and then disappeared. The people left, but their stone temples and streets can still tell us their story. Their cities looked different from ours, because they were often built to serve gods and kings. Stone, brick, and earthworks were shaped with enormous pools of skilled and unskilled labor, often mobilized through obligations to their gods or crown. Whereas nowadays, buildings are created with the cost being the major consideration, these ancient civilizations spared no expense to glorify their god in the beauty and scale of their work. At Angkor, Cambodia, inscriptions describe temple personnel, including slaves of the god, attached to their foundations. Whether in free devotion to the divine, or obligated in a more literal sense of the word, these ancient places wouldn't have been possible without vast numbers of people working with a single will. So what happened to these people? And how could they give up what they'd painstakingly created over decades and even centuries? We'll turn to our first location where a thriving society could not withstand the forces of nature and time. Cities rarely die in a day. Archaeology at Angkor shows exactly that, a long, uneven taper rather than a single fall. It was a sprawling landscape. Temples, causeways, and neighborhood mounds set among rice fields, stitched together by canals. The protected core today covers around 400 square kilometers, but surveys show Greater Angkor spreading across more than 1,000. At its height, perhaps 700,000 to 900,000 people lived across this network, making it the largest pre-industrial city by area. The key to its survival was water. Moats, straight canals, and vast reservoirs were made to withstand the common monsoons of the region and divert water into the rice fields that sustained the population. So, what happened? What changed wasn't a single bad season. Tree ring records point to decades-long droughts punctuated by intense monsoons in the 14th and 15th centuries, the pattern that broke their finely tuned hydraulic machine. Modeling of Angkor's network shows how these shocks triggered cascading infrastructure failures. Meanwhile, political and economic gravity shifted south. It didn't happen overnight, but gradually Angkor's massive population migrated for survival. But not all abandoned cities were left vacant intentionally. In fact, in this next case, you could say it's not vacant at all. Sometimes, immense natural disasters strike so quickly and with such ferocity that people have no time to react. On the southeastern shore of the Bay of Naples, in Italy's Campania, stood Pompeii, a thriving Roman town of the 1st century AD. Inside, roughly 66 hectares of walls. Around 10 to 20,000 people lived among markets, workshops, gardens, and brightly painted houses. Water from the Great Aqua Augusta Aqueduct fed street fountains and public baths. But all of this ended in AD 79, when Vesuvius erupted and turned an ordinary day to ash. Day 1, Mount Vesuvius blows a towering column of ash and gas into the sky. Over the next 18 to 20 hours, light stones called pumice and ash fall steadily across the town, piling up to about 2 to 3 meters. Many run. Others shelter indoors. Roofs begin to fail under the weight. Closer to the volcano, the rising column starts to collapse, sending fast, low clouds of ash and superheated gas toward the coast. Pompeii is still under falling pumice, but the worst is still to come. Just after sunrise, major surges finally reach Pompeii. They move like ground-hugging storms, carrying lethal heat, hundreds of degrees, and choking ash. Anyone still in the streets or sheltering inside stands little chance. Deaths are rapid, driven by heat and ash-laden air. Later excavations found their final positions as plaster casts, made by filling the voids left when bodies decomposed in the hardened ash. By the time the eruption subsided, Pompeii lay buried under several meters of fall and surge deposits. What remains is a cross-section of Roman life: markets, houses, writing on the walls, caught at the hour the city ended. In hours, the life of an entire city was extinguished by a single natural disaster. War is one of the most insidious ways that cities are abandoned. Thousands displaced by the efforts of people, and lives ruined for the gain of land, power, resources, or conflict. On Cyprus's east coast, Varusha was the island's showcase resort. 1970s hotels stepping straight out onto a long arc of sand, cafes and shop fronts made for summer. Then 1974 arrived. Cyprus had been tense for years. Power sharing was fraying, communities were splitting, and in July, a coup in Nicosia tried to pull the island towards union with Greece. Turkey landed troops and the front advanced. People in Varusha fled in hours, some with suitcases, many with nothing, expecting to return when the fighting stopped. The fighting did stop, but the return did not. Soldiers fenced the district and kept it inside a military zone. Internationally, the line hardened. The UN said that only the original inhabitants should one day resettle Varusha. In reality, decades passed with no resolution. Meanwhile, sun and salt took the paint from balconies, plants pushed up through paving stones, and shop mannequins stared out at no one. The resort turned into a time capsule. Borders and battles can erase communities as surely as nature. A city can be abandoned not because it fails, but because of human violence and greed. Today, most of Varusha is still closed. A few streets are open, and the rest waits behind the wire, and the argument over its future continues. If you take people out of a place, nature fills the vacancy fast. In the Chernobyl exclusion zone, the removal of human pressure has produced an abundance of large mammals, more than 7 times denser than in nearby reserves, despite chronic radiation. Along Korea's demilitarized zone, 155 miles kept largely off limits since 1953, surveys have recorded 6,000 species, including 100 plus endangered. Wintering red-crowned and white-naped cranes use the fields and marshes precisely because people don't. We abandon cities for many reasons: disaster, war, disease, famine. Pompeii ended in a day, Barusha was switched off by war, and Anchor thinned as water and power shifted. These places were filled with real people, living in their own moment of history. Our moment is changing fast. 2024 was the warmest year on record, capping a decade in which every single year ranked in the top 10. Heat is pushing other extremes with it. Heavier downpours in many regions, fiercer droughts elsewhere. Patterns the science now links clearly to a warming climate. Seas are rising. By mid-century, land that's home to roughly 300 million people today is projected to lie below the height of an average annual coastal flood. Jakarta is the stark example behind a national decision to relocate its capital. Out at sea, we're living through a global coral bleaching event, a planetary stress test that has touched reefs across both hemispheres since 2023. And beyond climate, the web of life that supports our cities is thinning. There are fewer pollinators, poorer soils, and increasingly emptier seas. So the question isn't whether ruins belong to the past. They don't. The real question is which parts of our present we want the future to inherit, and what we're willing to do to keep them.